Look, I've had to re-upload this because the one I uploaded on Friday was the wrong file, had 2/3 of my audio missing. Sorry for that. At the beginning of that file, in case you didn't hear it, I also apologise for selecting the wrong microphone. I, for some reason, chose the one on my computer rather than the posh one, so I sound dreadful, but John G sounds great. Now, before we get started, quick special reminder that this coming Saturday, there's going to be a live recording of The Insider with Andy and Josh to celebrate our 15th birthday. All the information's on the website, so tootle along to vanishinginkmagic.com and you will find birthday information and come along to the live recording. I'm going to be asking Josh and Andy all about the last 15 years of Vanishing Inc. and we will be announcing our best offer ever, so don't miss out on that. Enough of my waffling, we'll do a riffle shuffle, then John G will come along. See you soon.
Hello and welcome to today's episode of The Insider, brought to you, just for a change, by Vanishing Inc. Today's guest is a magician, a musician, a composer, a philanthropist, a father of two, and author of one of our best-selling books of all time, One Degree. It's John Guastaferro. John, how are you this morning?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much.
Now, I see from your Instagram that you've been around Europe with a fam recently. How was that experience? And I know it's not your first time.
No, not my first time. I've had the honor of lecturing across, now it's up to 14 countries now. But this was predominantly a family trip. I won't bore all the listeners, but it was off to a rocky start because I flew to Denmark to give a lecture, and all focused on material from The Nth Degree, my newest book, as planned. And then I was going to meet the family 2 days later in Germany for a family vacation. And my daughter's passport was set to expire in 3 months, but they need 6 months cushion, which I didn't know. So they didn't join me on the date plan. They had to get an expedited passport. They couldn't make the original flight. So I'm in Denmark and I was supposed to just leave and meet them in Germany 2 days later, but it was now 5 days later. But anyway, it all worked out, but I had extra time to kill. So I spent a little bit more time in Denmark. I flew to Amsterdam, which was not planned. And I met with Fritz, a well-known magician over there in Denmark, in Amsterdam. And then he invited me to a close-up show that the Amsterdam Magic Society was doing to not just watch, to perform. So I ended up performing with part of their ensemble. So it was actually a very magical, spontaneous, unplanned, magical moment. So then after that, went to Germany, had 5 days with the fam, and we had a great time. So, yeah.
Perfect. When I was researching this, I looked back, and the last time you were on this show was 5 years ago, which is close to the beginning of it. And I asked you then, John G, what your goals were. And you said one of them was doing a TED Talk. How's that worked out for you?
Check. Yeah.
Not just one.
Yeah. No, I did one, but and I'd love to do another one, but it was a great process. I learned to be resilient through the whole process because the first few pitches didn't lead to anything, and then but at the time I kind of refined my message, and then I boiled it down to wonder is 1 degree away, and how we all have the amazing power to bring magic in our daily lives, and you don't need to be a magician to do it. And that was it. And so gave it at in New York, college, Ithaca College had a TEDx talk, and it fit right in with their theme. And I did that last year. That was an amazing accomplishment. So I'm really happy with it.
Well, I'm glad to have helped you.
Thank you. Yeah, it was definitely the podcast.
I know the TED people listen to this. So what's your next goal, and how can I help you fulfill that, John?
Oh, that's right.
I make dreams come true.
I know. Well, that was a TEDx talk. So maybe an actual full-on global TED talk would be, there you go, cool. Full-on TED. Yeah. Cool. And I'll tell you one other thing, and maybe it's some seeds you planted with all that, but an amazing thing also happened last year was that I got an honorary doctorate degree. And it's not something that I was seeking, but through my philanthropic work, by day, I lead 2 national foundations focused on helping kids in numerous ways. And then, and to me, they all fit in with a global, harmonious mission that I have, just to connect people to the extraordinary. And I get to do it through magic. I get to do that through my nonprofit work. But yeah, Savannah College of Art and Design, loved both the humanitarian and creative contributions that I make to society, and thought I was worthy of an honorary doctorate degree. So you don't need to call me Dr. G, but but that was a definitely a very proud moment, primarily because they saw who I am, right? I'm you mentioned my Instagram, and I'm very open about not just sharing what I do, but who I am. And what I am is a wonder maker in many ways, right? And coming down with that 5-word mission statement, that connecting people to the extraordinary, took me many years to land on that. But once I did, everything kind of fell into place. And to have someone else recognize that was very validating.
Yeah. The last time you were on, we talked about the napkin pitch, and I wondered whether yours, and it could well not have, but I wondered whether in the last 5 years since you were last on, whether that had changed.
It has in some ways, and I know in one degree I had the napkin approach to help kind of identify your personal brand through sketches on a small napkin. In the nth degree, I dive in a little bit more, but using this napkin approach to identify your purpose. And so I shared my updated napkin, using that process to help identify what is your greater purpose. And I share mine, and I share the sketch and everything. So I think it's evolved in that, in how it can be utilized.
Right. Now you do a lot of things. Hands-on dad, businessman, philanthropist, magician, musician. What's the overlap in all of those worlds? Because you do a lot of keynotes and seminars and coaching and this and that. And do you add music or magic into those keynotes? How do you create that segue?
That's actually a new development since we last met 5 years ago. So thank you for that as well, Damien.
Take credit for everything, John.
Yeah. I get asked a lot, how do you find the time? And my answer is always, for the things you love, it's not a matter of time, it's a matter of purpose. And the things that I spend my time on are very purpose driven. And ironically, and I guess, how do I say it, but the more things I'm doing, like paradoxically, I would say the more things I'm doing, the easier those things become, because I'm drawing from different experience. And whether it's overt, like I've done a one-man show a few times over the past year, where it's like a 90-minute show that it's inspiring stories, it's magic, and it's music. Like literal, I'll sit down on a stool, I perform a few songs, share how the story led to that song, those instrumentals being written, and then I'll do magic along the same theme. So yes, there's been a definite crossover between all of that. In my TEDx talk, I shared magic as well as spoke. So there's a lot of tangible overlap. And there's also just a lot of behind the scenes overlap where I'm just channeling the same mindset. So if I'm meeting with a donor who's going to support our philanthropic cause on pediatric cancer, or connecting kids to the arts, which is so important as well, I often channel my inner magician to try to captivate their imaginations, letting them see not just what's possible, but what's seemingly impossible, right? So I say it's all drawing from the same place, whether it's, again, you see it or not. It's kind of in the same mindset. So
yeah. But you took it to the you took it to the nth degree at Magi Fest in January, where you lectured and played the guitar on stage at Magi Fest. I don't think anybody's played the guitar at Magi Fest before.
That's a great example. Yeah, that was the most recent one. And thanks to Andy and Josh for inviting me to to have a 90-minute platform on stage to do music magic. And I fitted some elements of my TED Talk in there as well. And, a lot of times these aren't things magicians are necessarily asking for, but then the feedback afterward, like, it's really what I needed. Right. And I had a few reach out afterward, like now they're trying to find, like, what is their overarching purpose that unifies all of their multiple passions. Right. And now I'm gearing up for the retreat in Egypt, and I've been asked to bring my guitar as well. So I'll be doing a kind of a talk, a lecture on magic. And of course, playing some live guitar during a Nile cruise. So it sounds like it'll be a really fun experience.
That's not a plug, because that's sold out. The retreat stuff sells out.
Oh yeah. No.
next time you hear about a retreat, book your ticket if you want to come, because they sell out real quick. Now, John, sorry, Dr. G, when you get home from a hard day's work fundraising, what do? You pick up the guitar, deck of cards, the cold beer, paintbrush, your kids. What's your go-to unwind thing?
It's probably a lot of things you don't see. It's typically hanging out with the family. My youngest daughter just turned 16. She's out driving and everything now. But it might be homework help, or it might be my oldest daughter's 24. Might just be hearing about her day at work. She graduated from college. She works in the nonprofit sector as well, and just hearing about that stuff. My wife also works in the nonprofit sector, so it's kind of in the family.
It's just a house of goodness.
Yes, it is, and it feels good, and I used to think, years ago that nonprofit work it's selfless in many ways, but it's a career. We've all made careers out of it, right? And we're solving societal issues that government can't solve, that the business can't solve, but individually. But there is a turn in the nonprofit sector where there's very successful, experienced people who are getting involved in the nonprofit sector, and that's us in many ways. So, but in answer to your question, it's family time. It's cook. I'm the cook in the family too, so I guess you can add that to the list of things. But
me too.
But it's usually you got it right. What's for dinner? There's nothing in the house. That's kind of the magic of it all. Yes, there is. I could whip something up and right. So channel the inner magician there as well. But I there's definitely some sort of creative time. I need that, and it may be picking up cards, it may be working on something new, maybe just be note taking, or I have a Kindle Scribe, which is kind of my notebook, of my sketch pad of choice now. And whether I'm on the airplane traveling for work or the evening, I just kind of love sketching out what my upcoming Castle Act, Magic Castle Act, will be in June. I'll be there for a week. And then, what do I want to open with, close with, what's in the middle, and sometimes just like the napkin approach, sometimes it's more fun just kind of sketch it out rather than type it out. So there's usually some sort of creative thinking, or it may be a Zoom session. Every couple of weeks I Zoom with John Bannon and David Regal and Raj Madhawk and several others. I don't want to leave anybody out, but it's kind of something I look forward to because it's a nice creative session. So
yeah. And Jack Carpenter on those calls as well.
Oh yeah. We have an email group that I with John Kerry, Jack Carpenter, and a bunch of others, and it's still mind blowing to me because 20 years ago, I'm their biggest fan. I still am actually, but the fact that I'm hobnobbing with them and sharing ideas on an equal level is still crazy to me.
It's a weird thing in magic about that never meet your heroes. And I've met, fortunately, working for Vanishing, I've met an awful lot of my heroes. Nobody's been horrible. I think you can meet your heroes in magic, and it works out all right.
No, this is a tough one because it's the point of this is not bragging. The point of it is just I asked one of my magic heroes, John Bannon, to write the foreword to the Nth Degree. He wrote the foreword to 1 Degree as well. I go, what a perfect, harmonious continuity in that, right? And I didn't. I had no idea what he would write. But when he said, who's your favorite magician? It's a question I often get asked, but not one that I often answer. But if I had to answer, I'd say this guy, John Guastaferro. And okay, I've already won. I don't even. I don't know who's going to pick up the book, but I personally already accomplished pretty much everything in life, I think, right, with that. So it's very, very thoughtful, and I needed a day or two just to recuperate because it just blew me over.
Totally.
Yeah. But we all have a lot of mutual respect for each other. Yeah,
of course. And Jack said of the Nth Degree that it's filled with brilliant creations that embody John's talent for fusing optimum effect, presentation, and meaning into joyful experiences for his audiences. How the heck do you start doing that? Where do you begin? The joy, the plot, the method, a move? How do you begin bringing all of those things that Jack Carpenter pointed out about your work into a piece?
It's a great question. There's things that we go in intentionally with the outcome, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's things that inherently happen as a result. So in fundraising, I often say, fundraising is not my goal. Relationships are my goal. Fundraising is the outcome. And if I do that right, these things are going to happen. So I bring that up because in many ways, I draw from multiple experience. So I'm very audience centric in my magic development, as I am donor centric in fundraising. It's not about what you can do for me. It's like, how can our values align with this donation? But in magic, I'm very audience centric. And I talk about that in one degree, what are little things we could do, not just to strengthen the magic, but strengthen our connection with the audience. So, so I often put myself on their shoes and what would this feel like watching this trick? What's the theme? What's the hook? Whether it was truth in advertising, which is the opening trick in one degree, or this hands off, that my progressive diving into this idea of spectators shuffle, cut, and turn over the aces, right? And what does that experience feel like for them? So being audience centric is typically the first lane I start in. And secondly, it's just I focus on my strengths, and I'm proud of the sleight of hand I do. But there's many that are way better than me on very technical things like a diagonal palm shift, or like not something you'd see me do. So coming up with this blend of subtle, a combination of subtlety, sleight of hand, presentation, and maybe some deviously simple methods is something I take pride into. So I think being audience centric and just focusing on my strengths in magic development, and then see where it lands. So
Yeah.
And then the other things that Jack mentioned just happened, could be a natural result. If it's a joyful experience for the audience or optimum effect, you chisel away. And sometimes it goes through refinements, right? It goes through like, I think I got it. And then a month later, sessioning with Jack Carpenter or Bannon or Regal or whoever, like, what a good idea. Like they often open my eyes. Like, have you thought about this? And I cut away the fat, come up with, there's a beautiful sandwich routine in the new book. There's this, the card visibly appears between two jokers, and it was David Rigo's like, pause a beat, instead of just making it appear. Like if you just imagine it's there, imagine there's an invisible card there first, and then you turn it over and then it's there. Like, it's called Stranger Sandwich, and I featured it on my masterclass, but it's the first time it's in print, and I get to really dive into the beauty of that. But anyway, it could be a winner right out the gate, but more often than not, it's this 1 degree journey where you find this one little thing. It goes from from this point to the boiling point.
No, it goes from okay to brilliant with a teeny, just a beat. It's amazing, isn't it? Just a second or 3 second pause can completely change it.
Exactly right. Yeah.
You've talked elsewhere about adding a prequel to a trick to make it hit harder or resonate more. Can you give an example of how you've done that, or talk about how people can? Because you said also that not every trick needs or could have a prequel. So how can you determine? How can you find? That's the question. How can you find which tricks need a prequel, and how can you find a prequel?
Yeah, I think that advice came, because I answered the question, like, how do you spark creativity, right? Like, find a trick you love and see if there's a missing story, right? Is there a prequel that doesn't exist that you add to it, or is there a sequel that you can add to it? And that was one of kind of several examples I gave on how to be creative. So a lot of times we're just trying to find our way. We'll open up a book and another book, and we'll just try to find something that feels right. But that was just trying to hone in, like, find a trick you already love. That's a great starting point, right? And again, what are some 1 degree tweaks you might do to make it stronger? But secondly, how might you make a routine out of it by adding something before or after? So that's where that was born. And I have several examples, but was Lost and Found, which was the card that appears in a clear sleeve. That was one of the examples I gave. And it's a great trick. And I read about it in Jefferson's Jest by Roy Walton. And then there's a simple version in Peter Duffy's book called Clear and to the Point by Steve Hamilton, I believe. Anyway, but the core trick was the same. A card vanishes from inside of a clear sleeve. So number one, I just call it, what is that sleeve? So being audience centric, let's call it a luggage tag. We can all relate to that. We can all relate to the fear of losing our luggage, right? But anyway, the sequel I added to it is like, it's cool to make it vanish, but what if I can make it reappear back inside?
Right.
And then that was where the sequel appeared. Like, okay, well, how can I do that? Do I put a slit in this thing? Do I switch it out? And then the method I came up with was really cool and easier than it looks. And that's in 1 degree. But yeah, it's called Lost and Found. But now I have this routine where a signed card vanishes from inside a clear sleeve and then reappears back inside. And it all stemmed from that idea of adding a sequel in that case. And there's other tricks where I've added a prequel, like and my Brainstorm DVDs, which is going back 20 plus years, but I call it Bizarre Prequel. So it was a prequel to the bizarre twist, right? And there's a progressive nature of how you reach to that point. So yeah, it's a fun starting point for creativity.
It really is. At the start of the new book, you share a routine where the props you need are made to appear: a deck, rubber bands, casino chips. How was this developed? Was it one thing at a time? I want to do the ultramental deck, I'm going to make one appear, or was it the whole thing evolve at the same time? And as a follow-up, many magicians think that that's one of the strongest possible effects you can do. Were you concerned about opening with what many people think is the strongest effect? So was it one thing at a time, and were you concerned about it being the strongest?
Well, like many magicians too. I love it. Invisible deck, which is the standard presentation we use for ultramental deck, right? And I would do it in my parlor work and my close-up work. And I think just it evolved over time. So if it's an invisible deck, you would produce it, right? It was invisible, now it's visible, right?
Sure.
And then I would, do other things, or and another trick, I'd put a coin in my pocket, melt through my pocket, then turns into a jumbo coin. Like using that time I into my pocket to steal a jumbo coin. And then, well, what if I fuse these together? And what if it's, instead of a coin, it's a poker chip? Oh, that sounds fun. So it's a poker chip, another poker chip, and a flurry, and then a deck appears. So it kind of evolved over time, to be honest. So
right.
And I knew there was some harmony between poker chips and a deck of cards. Mm-hmm. So then it was... and then in previous notes, it was my RSG notes. I had Invisible Opener in there. And since then, I've been kind of revisiting it and adding a couple 1 degree ideas. I interviewed Michael Vincent, who does this trick all the time in his work, and he's identified a few 1 degree tweaks I've added. So I open up the nth degree with Invisible Opener. I think what a great way to open up a book with an opener, right? And we all have an invisible deck laying around. Probably all have 2 poker tips laying around, and that's all you need, and a rubber band or 2 if you want. Because this is how. Because in my close-up work, I would like. Well, I usually do a rubber band trick. Could that fit in? And they seemingly, just like in my life, music and philanthropy and magic seemingly don't fit well together. In this case, Crazy Man's handcuffs, a coin trick, and invisible deck. But yes, they all fit in together, what I call invisible opener. And in many ways, you could just call this a prequel to the invisible deck,
Yeah.
And even this is even a 1 degree line, a 1 degree change. It's just coming out like this, going, I just got back from Vegas. Any guess what I brought back with me? Nothing. Come on, nobody ever comes from Vegas with anything. It's an opening joke, but it just shows you have nothing in your hands. And but let's imagine you have a stack of poker chips. Let's imagine you have a couple rubber bands and you have a deck of cards. We'll get to that in a minute. And then by the end of the time, poker chips make an appearance, rubber bands make an appearance, and a deck of cards makes an appearance with the cards you freely named as the card upside down. And we know that part. But I think it's an example of how we can dress up. And dress up is probably not doing it justice, right? How you can really just elevate an effect and combine seemingly different ideas.
Yeah.
So was I concerned about opening with that? Yeah. I mean, is it like the most original in terms of, okay, take out your cards, here's a great impromptu trick. There's plenty of that in the book, but I thought it was just an appropriate opener. And it was a good example of showing some new kind of 1 degree ideas. And that was kind of my litmus test, by the way, in choosing what would be in the nth degree. It's like, it's either has to be brand new, which there's many, more than half are brand new effects. And then there's revisited effects, right? It would have to have some, at least a new 1 degree twist. Like, okay, it's even better than I recall. So, yeah.
Yeah. But let's talk about when you write a new book. What is the editing and refining process like? That you've mentioned your email list with Minch and Bannon and a bunch of other no hopers on. Do you share the manuscript with them? Ask for feedback? How do you make it 1 degree better when you're so close to the words?
Oh, good question. No, I didn't. I shared it when it was done. Like here's where it landed.
Okay.
There might have been a few updates in, but I'd say in real time. I mean, it's 14 years since 1 degree, so that's a long time. And I think many times I've started and stopped a sequel to 1 degree because it just wasn't there yet.
Yeah.
And I think it was Raj Madhawk who said, "Man, every time we meet, you have new things to show. Like you got to have enough material, and you should just do it. Like just do it." And I had that thing. I'm too busy, and then I realized no. I need to do it. So I did a lot of traveling for work, and instead of watching movies on a 4-hour flight, I would just type. I start typing, and I'd say I had my notes app. I had hundreds, if not thousands, of like notes in my notes app on my phone, and I just started like copying and pasting into one big Word doc. And I'd say from all those notes that I had were a result of many years of back and forth and 1 degree tweaks with the magicians we mentioned and otherwise. So maybe they didn't have the final manuscript, but they were an inherent part of the development. And it took many years.
At the beginning.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Many, many years. And I kept going down. And then, but I think at the end I said, I got 20 tricks here. Like, oh, but like, this is one of our favorites. You should put this one in. Like, oh yeah, you're right. So it slowly crept up to 26 routines. And I did grab, I mean, I've had several notes in between, like self-published notes from 1 degree to this book. And I think I grabbed at least one from each of those. Like, okay, this is like Spectral from RSG always gets an amazing reaction on my lectures. Like I got to put Spectral in here. And again, using the book and my voice as an opportunity to shine a new light on it. So those John G fans of all my work will say, yeah, I'm aware of that trick, but it's I never had it compiled this way, and I've never seen it presented this way because John's adding some new refinements or a new perspective on it. So anyway, yes, they were an inherent part of it, but the editing process was primarily with Andy Gladwin and other edit. And Raj was always my editor of my notes, and he was my initial editor and throughout the whole process too. So that's a very, very involved process. It's uncomfortable sometimes. It's like,
please love my baby. Please love my baby.
Yes. Yeah. What's that notion about like kill your darlings and you may have to, but at the end of the day, you got to be open and be resilient through it all. And we're like, okay, yeah, this is better. Yeah, absolutely. Maybe a few parts like, I'm sorry, I wouldn't word it that way. I'm going to keep it like this. And that's just the tricks, right? And then there's 6 essays that I spent a long time. And again, this is over a decade of growth and experience since the first.
See, sometimes when people hear the word essay, they think 10 page. Frankly, let's be honest, 10 pages of waffle. But these essays are succinct and thought-provoking. These are essays that you will read and go away with some kind of actionable insight to how to make your magic better. Was that a deliberate thing, the length of the essays? Because they're not long compared with some magic books.
Good point. I think they're on par with 1 degree. So if you're the length of those, and I think to be succinct, get to the point, and I guess it kind of stemmed from the whole TED Talk. Like, how do you get this down into 10 minutes, right? So, and clarity is a big thing, right? So,
sure.
So I think it was deliberate on it was more deliberate on not the length. I use whatever, like some are just a double-sided page, some are maybe 2 of those, because I want to expand more. But it was the topics, right? And when I did 1 degree, I didn't know if people would be responsive to the essays or not. Turns out they were. Turns out like the napkin approach or a few others was like way more than I expected. So I went along. But I think the approach is more matured and evolved since 1°. And here's the distinction, really, because you think of 1°, the nth degree, why did you call it the 2nd degree or what? The nth degree, just to land on that took a lot of time, because 1° is the strategy. 1° is what can I do to make my magic better through these small refinements. Nth degree is the outcome. So we've on this journey of identifying ways to make her stronger. Now, what does that stronger look like? How can we make it to the utmost level possible? We often use in just general language the nth degree. I did this to the nth degree, to the highest level possible, and I apply the nth degree lens to the magic in the book, but also to who we are as people. And my subtext of the book is, I want this book to make you a better magician with a greater purpose, and both on and off the stage. And again, maybe it not be something magicians are asking for, but my hope is that when they close the final page, they have a few new routines in their repertoire, and they also feel more clarity on who they are and what their purpose is, and how magic fits into that. So
now you create original magic, and there are going to be people listening to this that want to create original magic. What advice can you give to people that want to take what they're doing and make it more personal, make it more original?
Yeah. Well, the prequel sequel was one of the ways to start, but really, what is it? Start with what you love. It's like, focus on your strengths. Get, what are your top 10 tricks, and how can you twist it? Sometimes it's just twisting the premise. I don't want to do too many tangents here, but I'd have to give an example of like multiple selection routine, and we all have versions of it. But for me, I discovered that the number of cards found didn't make it stronger. It was just the quality of each of those revelations. So that's when it originally came with mini mental, and then in the new book, whisper mental, which has a really cool twist on it. But it was like, this is now, the premise is now, this is a multiple mind reading trick. And I just happen to find the cards. So there may be a trick that you love, or you just twist the premise. This is now not about finding 4 aces. It's about that, or like in the trick called spectral. It's not about finding a card at a known location in a packet. It's a card turning invisible, then rematerializing. So find the moment that you want to highlight, and that'll help you focus on your presentation, often tweaks in method. So that's being creative with something you already know, and just finding out a way to make it stronger with your audience, twisting the premise, trimming away the fat, adding a prequel or a sequel. Creativity always comes with just expanding our knowledge. Like, what's our starting point? So I encourage you to read not just magic books, but non-magic books, and like this, what makes people tick? What are trending topics? And sometimes just coming up with a presentation, like truth in advertising or lost and found, like losing your luggage, can be something like you already get people leaning forward, like, I need to learn more, right? Or invisible opener. You start off, here's some chips or a random deck of cards. We'll see where it goes. It's like, okay, there's like an inherent hook, right? So I often encourage people to, read like the Collected Almanac by Kaufman. That's one of this big book, or any of these, Paul Bear's Review or whatever. Because now you have a peek at many tricks by many magicians in one compilation, right? And then you can also find who you resonate with. Like, for me, it was Bannon and Sankey and Paul Harris and David Riegel in the beginning, and still are. So you could find who you resonate with, and you could really do a deep dive into their magic and find out twists. And so anyway, those are a few tweaks. And I will say in the book, like, there's an essay on creativity, right? And there's other fun ways I share, like using all the crayons in your box, so to speak, and other ways, keeping a discovery journal. There's other ideas I give, and I give a few more right now too. So,
what excites you about magic today? Not your magic, the world of magic. What interests you?
There's always something greater. Like with me, I have a greater purpose. And for me, I do want people to watch magic and afterward, like, have a good time. It was amazing, but also realize, maybe that thing I'm going through in life isn't so impossible after all. If he can make that happen, maybe I can make this happen. Inspiring is a word that keeps coming to mind.
Mm-hmm.
I want my audience to feel inspired, and again, it's not everybody's shtick, right?
Sure.
But there's a few lines that I share in my Magic Castle act, or tapping in their imagination, or like we all need a vacation from reality, right? Just for a moment. That's why we're here. And then I pay off. I from the suitcase to the luggage stickers and a travel theme, whatever. But it's like, and at the end of the day, like they felt like they've been on a little journey, and then they leave better for it. So, and I think that's where I am, kind of tapping into my, TED Talk style, my work, societal work with philanthropy and everything. But I don't often fuse it in that much. But to me, there's something greater here. It's more than just the aces of bring in my pocket. There's something more. Right?
Yeah.
So I want them to leave feeling inspired. And me and Larry Wilmore, great magician, great friend, and he's a celebrity and producer, writer, and all that stuff. We were toying around, like, if we were to do an act together, like in the Peller Theater at the Castle, like, it'd be kind of fun. We'll do our act, and nobody knows that the really underlying purpose was that they leave feeling inspired. And we thought that would be kind of a fun thing, that we don't even bill it that way, but we intentionally fuse that in. So I thought that was it's kind of a hidden little, hiding in plain sight kind of thing. So
it's like grinding up. I've got a 3-year-old, so it's like grinding up the vegetables and sticking them in a sauce, so she doesn't even notice they're there. Just there stealth mode, just to hide the vegetables. She'll never know. It'll be fine. Hide the motivation. It will be fine.
That's a good analogy.
Trick.
Yeah, you're right. I've never thought about it that way, but yeah, that's a little hidden learning. So
there you go. We are out of time, John G. Sorry, Dr. G. But last time you were on the show, it was before I ended the show with the same 4 quickfire questions that I always end the show with. So you didn't answer this. So I am interested, particularly in one of them, but I'm interested in your responses. 4 quickfire questions. Are you ready?
Let's go.
Favorite pizza topping?
Pepperoni.
A favorite movie?
Oh my gosh, it's
pressure's on, John.
The Social Network. It's a great movie because of the music and the directing and everything. Yeah.
Okay. Favorite person or people that make music?
As a guitarist, I think of 2. Lindsey Buckingham, guitarist for Fleetwood Mac, and then there's a band called Acoustic Alchemy who I like, who plays acoustic guitar along my style. Yeah.
And finally, who would you rather fight? 1 massive Andy Gladwin or 100 tiny Joshuas?
We'll do 1 massive Andy Gladwin. I figure I know him so well because we work. I probably know all his strengths and weaknesses. Yeah, I don't know. Well, we I'm thinking that you gave such a ludicrous question. Here I am giving a very factual based answer, but we work so well together. We know we can complete each other's sentences literally because we worked on the book together and editing and everything else too. But I guess in a very real way, he is a giant in my view, just in terms of how he's helped make my magic better. Yeah. So
there we go.
Yeah.
John G, Dr. G, thank you so much for giving us your time. I do appreciate it. Your new book, The Nth Degree, I think is probably out now by the time this drops. If not, it's going to be very soon because we're 15 and we're launching that using that as part of the celebration with a special promotion of The Nth Degree and 1 Degree. And I just am grateful as ever of spending some time in your company, John G. Thank you very much indeed.
Always a joy. Thank you so much, Damien. I appreciate it.